Now we can begin. I'm delighted to welcome everybody to our quarterly meeting of Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education Board of Governors. We're delighted to be in Harrisburg. We're delighted to be in this room. It feels like old home week. Frankly, it looks exactly the same, except I do miss the portraits, you know, the chairs and the chancellors from the wall. That was kind of nice. But I also do want to thank the Jewish Federation of Greater Harrisburg, because I understand, as the new owners of the former Dixon complex, we are welcome to hold our board meetings here. And I actually met with the chair of the Federation last night, and she said it to me. So, you know, now it's public and on record, and she's got to let us meet here anytime we want to. So there we go. If I accomplish nothing else this meeting, we got that done. Before we get too far into today's business, I want to welcome a new member at our table. Since we were together last, Dr. Tanya Garcia finished her service to the Department of Education as Deputy Secretary and Commission of Higher Education. And now in that role, Secretary Mumin has tapped a leader who's already very, very familiar with Pennsylvania and with PASHE. And actually, I would add is a national thought leader on higher education, and has had just an amazing career and legacy of service, which she continues. So now let me welcome, or I guess welcome back, Dr. Kate Shaw. And sorry to put you on the spot, but we're so delighted to have you. And I just wanted to know if you wanted to say a couple words.
Thank you for the warm welcome, Cindy, and I am delighted to be here. As Cindy noted, I was in this same position about 13 years ago in the Rendell administration, and it is striking how many things have changed and yet how many things remain the same. I'm very happy to be part of an administration that understands the need to strengthen our post-secondary sector and better align it to the workforce and economic development needs of this state. And so I am delighted to be serving on this board, and I look forward to working with you to position PASHE in the center of those efforts. Thank you.
Thanks again, Kate, very much. All right, so for people who are on Zoom, let me ask you to please put your line on mute now so that Sharissa can do a roll call. Sharissa, go ahead.
Good morning. Senator Argall. Here. Governor Bogle.
Here.
Representative Briggs.
Here.
Governor Gindelsberger. Here. Governor Hancox.
Here.
Governor Harshberger.
Here.
Designee Steve Diatori.
Here. Here.
Governor Jones.
Here.
Governor Klingerman.
Here.
Governor Mazur.
Here.
Governor Moskowitz. Let's see, I'm sorry, Deputy Secretary Kate Shaw.
Here.
Representative Roy.
Here.
Senator Schwank.
Here.
Chair Shapiro.
Here.
Governor Skinner.
Here.
Governor Smith.
Here.
Governor Walder.
Here.
Governor Weaver.
He's here.
Governor Yeomans.
Here.
And Faculty Liaison Member Morris.
Here.
You have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And, you know, once again, I want to thank one of our vice chairs, Mr. Smith, because he's right here at my side and is such a good coach and continuing mentor, and pointed out that I told people to put their lines on mute for the roll call. You know, so I'm so grateful. I am really grateful. I apologize, and I just know we have such a smart board. They were able to figure that out anyway. Okay, so
I object.
All right, once again, welcome everybody. We're delighted to have you here. We're so happy to be in this building. We're so happy to also note that by selling the campus, the former Dixon Center, to the Federation, we are saving, our Apache system is saving money, which we're plowing back into the system. And the campus is being utilized in a really wonderful way that the whole community of Harrisburg will be able to participate in. So I think that's just, it's kind of a win-win all around. It's hard to believe that we are in more than mid-April and wrapping up our academic year in just a matter of weeks. So on behalf of the board, we thank so much all of our faculty and staff who are helping our students get to the finish line and walk across that graduation stage, because that is our purpose. That's why we're here. You are giving it your all, and we just we appreciate it, and we appreciate that. We know that you will stay in the Commonwealth and work here and become part of our workforce and our population. So on behalf of I'll look at you, our student governors, as representing that. It's really so important. Let me also thank everyone who took part in our workshop yesterday, where we learned from some amazing, talented national leaders about how we're supporting our talented faculty as they seek to meet the needs of our students. And today we're going to actually continue that conversation and hear from some of our own faculty members from around the system who are leading the way with innovation to increase the outcomes that we all want for our students. Let me also note that I am really looking forward to being at the East Stroudsburg campus next week as we celebrate President Long's inauguration. That's going to be awesome. I just hope you promise that the weather will be as nice. Okay. Yeah, because some of us have a long drive and, you know, when we want a beautiful day for you. Ken, you're such an important leader, and we're so excited to see you move East Stroudsburg to new heights under your leadership, and it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful event. And let me also point out that unfortunately, this is the last quarterly meeting for President Bill from Slippery Rock and our own Charissa here in the system office. You're both retiring in July. We will miss you so much, and we thank you both so much for everything you've done for Slippery Rock, for the system, you know, for the board. You guys are incredible. And as you know, you're not really totally leaving because we're inviting you back to be properly honored at our July meeting of the board. So we look forward to doing that then. Okay, so are we good to go to public comment? I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything yet.
Yep.
Okay then. So we now want to provide an opportunity for public comment. Let me remind speakers that they're limited to 3 minutes, and that is just to ensure that we have enough time to get all of our board business completed. So Randy, do you want to facilitate that?
Sure. For anyone here in the room who'd like to offer public comment, you can approach the podium. For anyone who may have dialed in on the phone line, just press *9 and that will electronically raise your hand, and then we can call on you. We'll give a moment for the folks online to respond. Okay. No one has pressed *9, and there's no one at the podium, Madam Chair.
All right, then let's call on Rick Furix for an update. Rick is, of course, the president of PACT. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everybody. It is a pleasure to join you in person. And like our chair lady said, it is a very familiar facility. I feel like I'm home also, so it's great to be here. And thank you for the opportunity to update you on the activities of PACT. A hallmark of the Pennsylvania system of higher education has always been providing a affordable opportunity for all students to attend an institution of higher education and providing a quality experience during their matriculation. As an organization, PACT embraces this hallmark and strives to provide a forum for trustees to connect, share best practices, and support the system. Now, when I met with you, when I began my tenure as president, I noted that this would be a year of transition. And we did not really realize what a great transition it would be. Losing Teresa has certainly thrown a kink in our armor. And Teresa, we are definitely going to miss you. During this past several months, we focused on keeping our trustees engaged and informed. We've opened the pre-Board of Governors meetings with the Chancellor to all the trustees, and this has been well received as it gives the trustees a thumbnail sketch of what the upcoming Board of Governors agenda looks like. And we have opened the Board of Governors workshops, like the one yesterday afternoon, to trustees and encourage them to attend. And we had many trustees attending virtually. Plans are now in the work for both our spring and fall conferences. The spring conference will be held via Zoom on May the 3rd. And during this conference, we will have the opportunity to hear from the Chancellor and the Chair about system priorities and receive a comprehensive integration update, as well as updates from Cody Jones and Randy Goen on our advocacy efforts. We are working with Cody and Randy to establish a committee to spearhead this effort for trustees. Student trustees, in my opinion, are the heart of the Council of Trustees. They are the trustees who live the decisions that are made by our councils. They are, for the most part, on campus every day and interact with other students, bringing a unique perspective to the council. And we will hear from them during our May conference. But this does not end our commitment to student trustees. We are currently meeting with these students on a monthly basis to assist them in their transition to the role as student trustees and working with them to be more engaged with their councils. We want to especially thank Dr. Mary Beth Williams, the Vice President for Student Affairs at Millersville University, for serving as the liaison to this group. Our October conference will be held in conjunction with the Board of Governors meeting in Bloomsburg. And this will be an in-person meeting, and we are currently working on the agenda. The PACT Executive Committee meets monthly with the system leaders to discuss issues and concerns that are relevant to trustees. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of the things that PACT is doing. Madam Chair, that ends my report.
Thank you so very much, Rich. We appreciate it. And congratulations, by the way, Rich, on everything you're doing with PACT. Love working with you. So let me now call on David Henderson from AFSCME for public comment, or for comments, rather.
Good morning, Madam Chairperson. How are you today?
Good morning, I'm fine.
And appreciate everybody indulging me this morning. It's nice to see everybody. Chancellor, good to see you again. My name is David Henderson. I'm the Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, and we proudly represent over 2,000 employees of the PASHE system. Their clerical and support staff, their maintenance, custodial groundskeepers, food service, and other hardworking individuals who make sure that the universities operate safely, cleanly, and proudly. And all these folks do this work with pride. They do it with commitment. They do it with dedication. They're members of their communities. So much more to universities than just merely their work. They're confidants of the students. They're mentors of the students. And often cases, or in some cases, they're the first people that students go to talk to because they feel comfortable speaking with those folks. They trust them. Their parents trust them. The communities trust them. They respect them. And these members deserve your respect as well, but not just in words, in actions. We all know that you consolidated 6 universities across the Commonwealth against our objections. We didn't think it was the right thing to do. Yet at the end of the day, we worked with you. We worked with you on various areas to assure that those individuals will be taken care of. But we also worked with you on other facets. Lock Haven University, our members there. The intent was to potentially contract out the custodial work. Our members there worked with the university, showed them the value that they bring, not only to the university itself, but the community as well. And the university chose to go a different direction, and we applaud that. We also worked with this administration and the Wolf administration on securing $5 million in scholarship money for state employees. It's the beginning, and that did come over a breakfast meeting, and we appreciate that. We have been willing to work with you. AFSCME was at the forefront of the $50 million that were secured in the last administration budget. Money that was meant to offset or minimize the reliance on retrenchment and furloughs through a variety of means, including retirement incentives, placement and outplacement for impacted employees, meant to provide for reskilling and upskilling opportunities through credentialing programs. We've not seen these funds used by PASHI for those resources. But I'm here today to talk specifically about what I and our members perceive as a lack of respect or disrespect. This board or PASHI has chosen to not participate during the pandemic years, not participate in the $1,000 pandemic payment, chose not to give employees the 5-day vaccine incentive leave. They gave them 1 day for administrative leave to get vaccinated. PASHI ended emergency leave, paid sick leave early after the legislature ended the governor's disaster declaration. PASHI ended on August 1st of 2021. It was supposed to expire December 31st of 2021. Everybody else under the governor's jurisdiction had those protections until June 30th of 2022. PASHI also chose to not to participate or decline the clerical series increase that members under the governor's jurisdiction received. These are the same folks I spoke about earlier. These are the folks that are being directed to do more work with less. The consolidated universities are being forced to operate with less people and working, whether you work at Clarion and you're helping Edinburgh out or you're helping California out. These are the folks that we're talking about. Now, we understand it's difficult to get people into the workforce today. We're experiencing that all across the Commonwealth, and you're not excluded from that. But things like these actions don't make it easy for you to recruit people. And in some cases, it's creating a need for you to contract work out because you can't find people to do the work, to the tune of about $11 million last year. We find that reprehensible. We find that disrespectful to the folks that you rely upon each and every day to make sure that the students that are there, that we all talk about how we care for them. We want to see them succeed. But you're not providing them with the resources that they need to succeed as well. And if you're looking to recruit people, this is not the way to recruit people. And the height of disrespect was the fact that this board chose not to move the pay raises forward, that the rest of the governor's jurisdictions and other agencies chose to give to their employees. Instead, you waited till the contractual guidelines, which again, we understand that's negotiated. There was an opportunity that I believe you missed to send a message to the folks that work for you, our members, your employees, but not just AFSCME members. We're talking about all the folks that work for you in areas where you have chosen to work with the universities and with the employees there, such as Westchester. That's the only university you chose to work with. There are other universities within the same county or the same geographical area. Cheney University refused the same options that Westchester employees were afforded. And it's not like we're not grateful. We are appreciative of the fact that you work with the folks at Westchester. We would encourage you to work with each university to provide them with the same benefits and the same consideration that you gave Westchester University. These actions undermine the value that these employees bring to the table, bring to the work site. They undermine the confidence employees have in this board. They undermine their confidence that in this board to treat them with dignity and respect. I just ask one question. When will you begin to recognize them? When will you begin to recognize them for the work that they do? And make sure that all of your universities, which we're all proud to be associated with, continue to operate in the best way possible and provide the students there with the same kind of support that they need, not just from this board, but at the universities, for their mentors, their confidants, the people that they go to on a regular basis because they're in need of having a conversation, and they take the time to come and talk to those folks because they're not comfortable talking to somebody else. The time is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Okay, before we start our business agenda, I invite us to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. As we start, the first item of business will be the presentation of the Ali Zaidi Award. And for that, I'd like to turn it over to Board Vice Chair and Chair of Student Success Committee, David Mazur.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairwoman Shapira, everyone in attendance today. I'm very pleased that we have a very special opportunity to recognize student excellence and achievement today. We look forward to this award presentation every year. It is one of the highlights of the April meeting and of the year. Created in year 2000 by Dr. Saeed Al-Zaidi, a charter member of the Board of Governors and the State System Foundation, the Saeed R. Ali-Zaidi Award for Academic Excellence is conferred annually upon a graduating senior from one of the state system universities in recognition of outstanding academic achievement. Funding for this award was made possible through gifts from Dr. Ali-Zaidi, Highmark, and the Pesci Foundation. The Pesci Foundation is a valuable partner in supporting and enhancing student persistence, completion, excellence, internships, and employment, which are perfectly aligned with the goals of this committee. It is my privilege to acknowledge Mrs. Lynn Miller, Chair of the Foundation, who is with us here today. Ms. Miller? I don't actually see her. Well, thank you for all the work you do, whether you're here or in absentia. There are 10 students every year who are nominated by their universities for the Ali-Zaidi Award. Each of them represent the best of the talent, motivation, and remarkable accomplishments of our students. In recognition of their achievements, the 9 finalists will each receive a certificate signed by the Chancellor and myself, as well as a $50 award from the foundation. They are all winners in their own right. But without further ado, I would ask President Fiorentino, President of Westchester University, to come to the podium to introduce the winner of the 2023 Ali-Zaidi Award. President.
Jocelyn, could you come stand next to me, please? Well, I was thrilled to nominate Ms. Jocelyn Brown for this award, and we are especially proud to see her recognized among her highly qualified Pesci peers. While we had many exciting candidates to consider, Jocelyn stood out because she epitomizes the ideals and the work ethic that we hope to impart upon every student who comes through Westchester University. This is the first time a Westchester University student has received the Ali Zaidi Award. But Jocelyn has an established history of being the first. She's the first in her family to go to college. She was the first woman awarded with a full semester internship with the Norwegian Nobel Peace Institute in Oslo, Norway. Jocelyn is a political science international relations major with minors in global studies, civil and professional leadership, and philosophy, and she'll be graduating with a bachelor's degree next month. Throughout her university career, Jocelyn has not only sought out opportunities to improve and challenge herself inside and outside of the classroom, she's also made tremendous efforts to help other students do the same. She has advocated for her peers and promoted and celebrated their successes time and time again by serving on the First Gen Steering Committee and Council of Undergraduate Research, founding the Model UN Club and the first interfaith advocacy group on campus, and serving as a peer educator for the Center for Women and Gender Equity, as well as discussion leader and content advisor for 3 honors classes. She has connected 33 sophomores and juniors with faculty looking to collaborate on research projects, educated her peers on bystander intervention, gender inequities, and interfaith issues, and led her student organization to survive and thrive during the pandemic and beyond. And she did all this while maintaining a 4.0 grade point average. Jocelyn, I know you have plans to become a professor of international relations and to keep supporting and empowering students. I have no doubts you will find success wherever your path takes you from here. I thank you for how you have embraced Westchester University. Our school is a better place because of you. I hope you know you have undoubtedly inspired others to follow in your footsteps. I know you have inspired me. Thank you and congratulations. This is for you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Good morning. I love call and response. Thank you so much for having me here today. And thank you so much for this honor. It's not something that I could have imagined coming into college. My professor and I, oh, he's over there now, Dr. Lodell, who drove me here very kindly, and I on the ride here, we're talking about approaching higher education as first-gen students and how you don't know anything about it except that it's your meal ticket out of there. It's your meal ticket out of rural Western Pennsylvania. No offense to Western Pennsylvania. I still love being from there. So I don't have concrete plans post-graduation yet. I hope to resettle in Europe before returning for a PhD program because I am still dedicated to making higher education a better place for everyone, especially students like myself. So keep me in your prayers and your LinkedIn pages. And no matter where I relocate in the next couple of months, the money with this award is so needed to help me do so. So thank you so much again for this honor.
Just going to pause, take a quick photograph with the award winner for those on Zoom.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. It's just, you know, Dan and I were having a little sidebar about the remarkable people that we had who were nominated for this award. And it's, you know, it's just such a wonderful thing for our system. We have such amazing students. We really do. And they they make their world better while they're on campuses, and they will really make our world better when they're out in the world. So thank you again. I wish I could just end the meeting now. Right? But unfortunately, we're going to continue with our business meeting. All right, so our first order of business now will be to approve the consent agenda, which includes meeting minutes, committee assignments, and bond refinancing. Hey, I'm putting out the motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Our next item is to talk about a few items that Dan will lead the discussion on, innovation and the status of our DEI review of system level policy. So Dan, go ahead.
Fantastic. And so I think this is under Chancellor remarks. So as last time, I'm going to turn over directly to my colleagues to give my remarks on these topics. I'm super excited. So why don't we move directly, Randy, into you're going to load the slide deck. Is there a slide deck?
Donna will set it up.
Thanks. Donna, thank you so much. Just for the record, when we met in whatever it was yesterday, workshop mode, we heard, was it yesterday? It was yesterday, yeah. We heard about an initiative which is focusing on faculty professional development, has tremendous outcomes with respect to both faculty and student engagement. And today we get to hear from faculty who are involved in that initiative. And Donna, please take us forward.
Sure, thank you. We have two faculty joining us today, and one of them who was unable to join, but so excited about his participation in the AQ course that he took time to create a little video for us. So we will be hearing from three faculty, and I'm going to just move straight to them. First up is Dr. Maggie Habib. Dr. Habib is Associate Professor of Mathematics at Penn West, California. She has been there since 2012. She herself is a product of public education, the CUNY and the SUNY systems. She's passionate about providing students with an excellent education and is a marvelous spokesperson for what she has been learning through the AQ course modules. So Maggie, thank you for joining us today. Please.
Thank you so much for having me. So I just want to tell you a little bit about my journey. So I started teaching back in 2007 when I was a PhD student. You know, I was good at math. So they said, go ahead and teach math. And they just threw me to the wolves, you know. And, you know, I learned a lot. You know, I've been teaching, that's it, it's over 20 years. So I've been teaching and I've learned a lot along the way. But when I started this course last semester, for me, it was like a breath of fresh air. Like I learned, you know, there were some techniques I already knew. Maybe I didn't know the name of them, but I learned them as I was going. But I've learned many new techniques and I've had the chance to implement them based on the course structure. So the way the course is, they teach you about a technique and then you have to try to implement the technique, you know, time permitting, and then reflect on, you know, how did that go when you implemented it. So I wanted to talk about two techniques that I use just to give you some examples that I felt really helped with student retention and student engagement. So, you know, I'm from math, so there's lots of, you know, FDs and Ws in the class. So I feel like that those numbers have decreased since I started implementing these things over the last year. So the first one I wanted to talk about was checking for student understanding. So I always hated to be called on when I was a student. Like it was just mortifying for me. And one of the modules had said, you know, if you're trying to check for student understanding by only calling on the students that have their hands raised, you kind of get a false sense of like security in terms of like what your students know. And by only calling on the students that, you know, are raising their hands, you're likely only calling on the students that know stuff, because the ones that don't know aren't going to raise their hand and be like, oh, hey, you know, I don't really know what you're talking about. So even though I didn't like to be called on as a student, I started kind of cold calling my students a little bit more just to check for understanding during class time. And what I found was exactly like it said in the module was that those students didn't necessarily know the answer, like the ones that were so willing to participate. And then it also encouraged kind of more active participation in the class, because I think sometimes students think it's okay just to sit and passively listen and they're not totally paying attention to what you're saying in class. So by calling on them, they're a little bit like on their toes, like, oh, I have to pay attention and like really think about what she's asking me. And since I've done that, like I could think of one student this semester who never ever would raise his hand. And after I called on him once or twice, now towards the end of the semester, he's raising his hand and participating. So he's definitely more active. And that one student that I have in my mind, I think he failed the first 2 quizzes and he got an A on the last quiz that I just gave back in class yesterday. So it's super pumped for him. The second one that I wanted to talk about was leveraging technology in the classroom. So, I'm a California campus. Last semester, I had to teach a course where I had some students at Clarion and I had one student at Edinburgh. And, it's a math class. I like to let the students do some work in class. So it was really hard for me to gauge when I give a problem in class, what are those students on the other campuses actually doing? I can't see what they're writing on their paper. They could just be drawing pictures for all I know. So in one of the course modules, they said, leverage technology. If you're giving something in class and you want to just do a quick check on their understanding, it's a really simple idea. Take a picture of your work, make them submit it to a detailed Dropbox, before the end of class. And then you've assured that they're staying engaged in what you're doing. And then you're also able to check to see if they understand what you're doing. So you could plan for the next class appropriately. So those were just like 2. I mean, I've used many of the things that they've mentioned in class, but those were 2 that stuck out in my mind that I felt really helped with student engagement. So like students just paying attention, like actually really listening and trying to learn the material and doing work in class, and with retention because they're able to learn the material better and then they survive the class more. So that's all I had to say today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if you'll stay on for just a few minutes, if there are any questions for you, we'd love to hear from you again. Dr. Matthew Simmons is a full-time temporary faculty at Cheney University who teaches Africana Studies and political science. He has been teaching at PASHE since spring of 18, recently earned his PhD. His research interests are in Black Philadelphia middle-class voter abstention and any connections of that abstention to African-inspired social political structures. Fun fact, he says, he attended Tougaloo College, a private HBCU in Mississippi, and is a member of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. So Matthew, thank you for joining us this morning. Please, we're looking forward to hearing about your experience with AQ.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you all doing today? First and foremost, thank you for letting me come today. My sentiments, I started teaching in 2013, fresh from a master's program to my PhD program. So like my colleague, Dr. Maggie, I was thrown into teaching, right? And what I did initially was to think about how my previous or my professors who taught me how they taught me. So I was like, let me implement that into myself as I go along, right? I've taken some training courses about teaching and pedagogical methods, right? Throughout my matriculation through Temple University. But when I got into this program, it made me be very intentional, made me really think about how I'm teaching my students, right? I always try to make a very environment, a very conducive, a very tolerant, a very loving environment in my classrooms, but it made me go back to basics, right? It made me look at my syllabi a lot more. That's one of the things that we talked about in the class, right? Is that let's look at your syllabi. Let's look at making sure that you are being very intentional with how you're teaching, what you're teaching, and how it connects to the overall goals of the class, right? So it made me be very intentional about that. But also it made me look at different ways in which I could assess my students, right? I know I was taught, to always look at, like, for example, essays and, writing research papers and for my students. But I was like, hold on, wait, this is not a lot of times equitable for a lot of our students. So I have to be able to broaden my assessment capabilities and methods in order to make sure that I reach every student, right? So one of my examples that I want to utilize for that type of methodology is that a lot of times I teach a Black politics course at Cheney. And usually we'll have like a big essay at the very end of the class or at the end of the semester. And, they'll tell me about their favorite Black political figure and how it connects to their everyday lives. So what I started doing, and I started doing it at the beginning of last semester, was thinking about ways in which I can make it fun for them, right? I can make it so that they can connect the material to their everyday practices, right? Make it more equitable. So what I asked them to do is to make a Black political mixtape, which is to connect their musical tastes, their musical talents, their musical heroes to these various Black political thoughts, right? And it just expanded their mind. It's one of their favorite assignments that they've ever done. And one of the reasons why it connected with them, because I wanted to make sure that the readings that they were reading connected to their everyday experiences. And that's one of the things that this module helped me to look at, is right, looking at different ways in which we could motivate our students, different ways in which we could ensure that they're engaged, different ways in which they can see themselves. Because, I know at Cheney University, and I can possibly, think about at other universities, that we're trying to build our next leaders, right? We're trying to make sure that they are equipped with the tools that they need in order to not just be the best workers, but also the best critical thinkers, the best scholars, the best people, right? We're teaching people. So this module helped me to really go back to basics, right? It really helped me to really think about in what ways am I creating the space for my students, and in what ways they can show up authentically for themselves, right? In what ways can they able to see themselves, right? Also, I use a lot of technology in my class, but it also made me go back to making sure that I go back to basics, go out a flow chart. I didn't know how powerful a flow chart was until I started doing it myself, right? Again, I've used PowerPoints, I've used, other type of methodologies, visual aids in order to help my students, but just making sure that they see connections in the simplest things, right? So it made me go back to that. So that's what I have as far as like my contributions. The training was very important, very enlightening. There's some things that I haven't implemented yet that I'm going to implement for the next semester and the following years. So I'm very glad for this module. Very glad for this training. I'm very glad to be a part of it, especially the initial phase of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Dr. Roger Benefiel is Associate Professor of Criminal Justice at Commonwealth University Bloomsburg. He received a PhD in criminology and criminal justice from Arizona State University in 2015 and began teaching in the fall of 2016. But prior to his teaching profession, he was an associate warden with the Federal Bureau of Prisons. He had worked for the Federal Bureau of Prisons for 25 years. Prior to that, he was also a police officer, and before that, a sergeant in the Marines. So he represents in many ways both the larger community of students that we are reaching and a professor who has come through a different pathway. Roger's not able to be with us today, but he has sent us a video. And Randy, are you?
Hello, this is Roger Benefiel. I'm an associate professor of criminal justice at Bloomsburg University in Pennsylvania. I was asked to provide this short testimonial regarding the AQ program that I took when here at Bloomsburg, and I was happy to do it. Honestly, I thought it was one of the best programs I've ever taken. Okay, and this is why. I didn't start my academic career like most people. Okay, I was an adult learner. I had a job. I'm retired. I'm a retired associate warden with the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I gave the Bureau of Prisons 25 years. Before that, I was a police officer. Before that, I was a sergeant in the Marines. I had a full life, right? I retired. right? But I didn't want to stop there when I retired. I wanted to do more, and I wanted to go back to school, and I wanted to teach. So about 10 years before I retired, I went back and I got my master's, and then I worked and I got my PhD. So when I got my PhD from Arizona State in 2015, I started applying for jobs, and I took a job here at Bloomsburg in 2016. So I retired from the Bureau in April of 2016. I started here in September of 2016, right? What makes that unique, what makes that relating to AQ is this. In my 25 years of working for the Bureau, I was in front of people all the time. I taught all kinds of classes. I came up through custody. I was teaching fellow professionals everything they needed to know about custody and corrections and things like that. That's, it was part of my job, was to train during annual training. So when I became a professor, I had the same approach to students that I had towards working professionals. And it's not the same thing. Okay. I had this, I knew that I needed to be bombastic. I needed to be aggressive, loud, and I needed to be, I needed to have a lot of hand movements and gestures and, inflections in my voice, to present the material, to keep people engaged. What I found out was that there is so much more to this than just being able to present the material in a non-boring way. Okay. There's so much to this, because PhD programs don't teach you how to teach. They teach you how to be an expert in your field. Okay. So I learned that very quickly, and I wanted to do everything I could to try to learn to be a better professor. That's what I was doing. I took every kind of class I could think of through the Teaching and Learning Center. I was online certified. If the class came up, I took it. So when this AQ program came up, I jumped at the opportunity, and it changed my life. Okay. It did. It opened my eyes to so many things. I didn't know what I didn't know, to be perfectly honest. This class changed how I approach my courses, how I organize my courses, my syllabi, my rubrics, pedagogical techniques that I didn't even know existed, or ones that I didn't think really applied to me, etc. How I grade. I mean, virtually my entire process and product that I put out to students changed because of this course. And I'm better for it. I'm a better professor now than I was before, because I have techniques now. Okay. Doesn't mean I'm an expert. I'm learning all the time. I'm reading new books. I'm trying new things. The sources that we get, the networking that we had, in this course was incredible. Okay. I learned so much. I can't even begin to describe that. I'm better now because of when I took this course. So I want to leave you with this, because it's a short presentation. I know that the board, or at least I would think that the board is, you're geared towards trying to improve the student experience, right? You want to do what you can to make sure that students get out of college what they think they're supposed to get out of college, right? They want to have better skills. They want to be better performers. They want to get good jobs, right? And we want to keep students in schools so they can learn these things, right? But it's not just that. It's, there's a whole, way of looking at the world. There's a way of, becoming better consumers of information, and, better able at communication and speaking and critical thinking and all the things that come with a college education, so, we want to invest in that. We really do. And it makes sense to do that. But one of the best ways you can invest in students is to invest in the teachers that are providing the instruction. When you invest in teachers, you're investing in your students. We're the ones providing the information. We're the ones that are doing the things that we need at a university. And we want to do it. We want to be everything we can be for our students. At least I do. I mean, everything I could possibly do. I prep as much as I can. I read as much as I can. I learn as much as I can. And I'm trying to learn new techniques all the time. But this class did that. And so I just wanted to leave you with this. Please consider this program an investment in the quality of the instruction that our students are getting. Because when you invest in the people that are providing it, we provide a better product that aids in retention, that increases graduation rates, that better prepares people for life beyond college. Okay. And that's what we all want. If we want a better university, let's make our professors better instructors, and AQ is an outstanding way to do that. Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I would love to talk to you. Have a pleasant day. Goodbye.
I think we have a minute if you have questions or observations or comments. I think the faculty did a really remarkable job of connecting investment in faculty development, in refining and working on their craft of teaching, connecting that to students and their success.
If I could, yeah, I have to confess, I never knew that college professors weren't necessarily ever taught how to teach. So that was a little bit eye-opening to me. I mean, it's like, duh, but I really didn't think of it that way. And I've talked to a few people that know more than me, and it's like, yeah, you know, we teach those people, you know, you get a doctorate because you're becoming an expert in your field. You're not really being taught how to teach. However, when I watched these presentations today, and I appreciate the excitement and the enthusiasm, these folks that were before us, and I'm not at all disagreeing with anything they said, but the first presenter talked about, you know, picking on students that were sitting there quietly and not talking and, you know, volunteering to get them engaged. I feel like I was just shopping on Amazon for something, found a product, went down to read the reviews, and all you see are the real positive reviews. So my question is, has anybody talked to some of the people that participated in this ACU program, but didn't come out of it all enthusiastic, didn't come out of it, you know, like, yeah, I really learned something, because they presented that stuff yesterday in the workshop and we couldn't talk about it quite in this context in a workshop. But there were certain people that, you know, just didn't seem to respond. I want to know what they have to say about it. And I'm wondering, have you talked to them, some of the people that, you know, were part of this project, but didn't, you know, get excited about it, like the people that we had today?
I wish that the provosts were back with us today. They're the ones that are a little closer to that work. We have had a really remarkable completion rate among the faculty in all of the pilots that we've done. So most of the faculty, because they completed, are going to be pretty positive about the experience and about what they learned. There are a small number that did not complete.
And
Sam
these were mostly people that volunteered in most situations. There were people that volunteered to do this, right?
Yeah.
So there were people that were actually thinking, yeah, I really am excited about learning some new things. I'm talking, how do we measure the people that aren't going to be excited, that are kind of, you know, I mean, there are some people that just, you know, do their job, but they're not really gung-ho to like figure out how to do it better. And I just feel like we're seeing positive reviews that you see when you look at a product online, and you got to search around and see if there's actually any negative reviews. And that's what I'm looking for. And I'm not comfortable that that's been evaluated as we talk about the need to, as the last gentleman was talking about, you know, to encourage and help our faculty be better is good for us as a system. It's good for our students, you know, good for everybody. I agree with that 100%. I'm just kind of not sure that, you know, I just feel like we're jumping into this, like, okay, let's go do more of this. Yeah, but are we doing it the right way? That's all I'm questioning.
So we do have, Randy tells me, a couple of the provosts from yesterday on. Diana and Sharon are both here. Do either of you have a comment in response to the question?
I'm here. I'm on my cell phone. This is Dr. Graham Busabukwe from Cheyney University. And as those of you who heard me yesterday know, and you heard President Walton say that we did not have all volunteers. Our faculty were identified to come, many based on the previous provost's analysis and evaluation of their teaching. And so we've had a 50% rate, but completion, we're not finished. We have 50% who have persisted, but some of those were slow starters, as I mentioned yesterday, as a result of being identified over the summer, getting started, and not really having a great opportunity to acclimate. But I will say that those who, even among those who persisted till the end, there were very reflective comments. Perhaps our faculty member who is the furthest along, has completed on time, is a seasoned faculty member, and she said it's very good, especially for younger faculty. It is an amazing and tremendous, it is amazing program, but it is a tremendous commitment of time. And so one of the things that she says is, if we really want faculty to do this well, and if we want to identify faculty who may not be the stronger faculty, we need to find ways to help them commit more time. And as I said yesterday, the other major issue that came out here at Cheney is the need for the course to include more about the kinds of students that we're encountering on a regular basis, students that have ADHD, students that have, and I'm sure everybody has this, the students who have high levels of anxiety and depression. They really desire more help in knowing how to deal with many of these issues. I'll stop there.
And I see Dr. Morris has your hand up.
Hi. Oh, let me lower my hand. So, I was in the workshop yesterday and I heard all the very rosy, reactions, and I'm very, very glad that there are faculty who are finding this kind of training useful and productive to be, better teachers in the classroom, because that's what we all want. We want our students to be engaged and we want them to learn. And I would like to say there's one very big piece of misinformation that seems to be coming out here. And I really don't want it to become, the thing that becomes true just because a bunch of people say it. Several of my colleagues who've spoken, and now people on the board, think that when you go to PhD school, you don't get trained to teach. And for a vast majority of us, that's just not true. I remember in my own PhD work, I took one whole year of courses and mentorship and everything regarding pedagogy and specifically teaching of writing. But it included actually a lot of the things that my colleagues who took the training spoke about. So like some of those things, personally, I've been doing for years. And I also have a lot of friends in the system who are professors who, for instance, have degrees in education, which is all about learning how to teach and navigate with different groups in the classroom. So I guess my concern is, given that it's 25 weeks at 5 hours a week, plus you're supposed to find time to incorporate one of these strategies as you're doing the training on top of everything we already do, my concern is that it's going to land like an insult to a lot of faculty. And I don't think you're really maybe necessarily considering, we want our faculty to be engaged and to be enthusiastic, of course, but coming at us saying we don't know how to do our jobs isn't the way to do that. Thanks.
I wonder if I should jump in here, and I'll take responsibility for not actually queuing up the innovation session appropriately. It's funny, Randy and I spend an awful lot of time. In fact, we're always planning for board meetings. So there's this continuous sort of planning going on. And of course, so we're acutely aware of what happened, not just in the last board meeting, but in board meetings 9 and 10 board meetings ago. And that's just the way our lives work. It's like being on this moving sidewalk, which doesn't stop. And so let me just go back and remind us that the purpose of the innovation session, we're not trying to sell you product, or necessarily even in this circumstance to advocate a particular point of view about faculty professional development necessarily. The purpose is to sensitize us as a board and the general public to the kind of innovations that we're going to need to explore in order to do the things that we all want to do as part of the system redesign. And I take you back, and this is how really bad it is for people like me and Randy, to the board meeting, which I'm sure you remember, right? In July of 2022. This is really sick. I appreciate that. We talked about, how many more students does the state need for us to graduate in order to fill the jobs that are there going unfilled. right? And so we did the math on that and we said, oh my God, we need to up our credentialing productivity by a lot. And then we went through the kind of math of that, which, okay, where are we going to get those people from? Because remember, the traditional student population, high school leaving population is declining. So we asked ourselves, where are we going to get those people from? And so the answers were, and this is really sick, I can visualize the slide, and if you want it, I can pull it up probably within a minute.
Yeah.
But this is what we said. We're going to get about 30% of the way by doing better by the students we have. Improving the graduation rate of the student you already enroll is by far the easiest way to advance your credentialing productivity, right? That was one. And then we were going to reach into new, and then we're going to improve sort of traditional pipelines, because we're good at recruiting students from high schools and community colleges. That's what we do. We have people on the ground who do that sort of thing. Well, let's just do more of it. Yay. But then, we still don't get far enough to sort of get that bump. So then we have to reach into new and adjacent markets. And we talked about non-degree credentialing, and we talked about online programming and a bunch of other potential options. So the purpose of the innovation sessions was to sort of dig into, okay, what does it take to do those things? And so last time, I can pull up the deck if you need it in an instant, we did the non-degree credentials, right? And we talked about what does it mean to do micro-credentialing, and we had people in to talk about micro-credentialing, and that was one of the new and adjacent markets. And then this time we thought, okay, let's go into the improved retention and look at some of the innovation that is gaining traction. And we try to be as evidence-based as we can. And so the most important thing, obviously, in improving student retention is the engagement of faculty. I mean, just the data show it. And it is kind of remarkable, and Amanda's absolutely right. The extent to which I got no training in my PhD program. I was one of the ones who was thrown to the wolves. And it was one of our speakers said, I think it was Matthew, so, okay, you remember what your favorite teachers did. Well, you have no idea why they did it. You just knew it was good. So, but to Amanda's point, many of my colleagues had come through programs where they were either formally trained or they were, they had taught in graduate school, and they were mentored by great faculty who actually taught them how to teach through that experience. So it is very, very episodic. But the point isn't, to sell a product or to sell an idea. It's just to demonstrate, as we learned yesterday, that, when you have an engaged faculty who are current in their methods, and there's nothing in here to say, I'm not saying faculty aren't, or it's not about that. You get a big bump, and AQ's been around long enough. There's other folks who do this for a living, but AQ's been around the longest. So they have or amongst those who've been around the longest. So they have longitudinal data, which allow them to go beyond student improvement at the course level, more pass rates in the course, into student outcomes over a period of time. And, a 4 percentage point increase in retention as a consequence of fairly pervasive faculty professional development. I think it was at University of Southern Mississippi, and they've seen similar results elsewhere. That's a big deal. I mean, it just is. And again, go back to the purpose of the conversation. If what we're trying to do is to figure out, how do we fill that delta? How do we fill that gap? Doing more of the same. And I remember saying this in July, that's even worse, right? You could pull up the deck is one thing, you can pull up the copy block in your head. But I remember saying, it turns out when you're traveling abroad and you're in a foreign country where they speak another language, speaking English more slowly and louder doesn't seem to work seriously well, right? If you want to get a better outcome, you have to do something different. So the innovation sessions are to really expose all of us together to the kind of practices which are current in higher education. Last point, and then I'll shut up. It's interesting to me, having often been in systems, and there's the University of California was, I guess, my first big one. Well, anyway, UK was a big system too. Systems can be, and they're wonderful places, but because they're so big, there's a natural tendency for the people in them, and it's faculty and staff and the boards, to look inward. It's just because we're so big. There's a lot to look at, and it's great stuff. It's harder to look outward. just because the compelling attraction of looking inward is so there. So the innovation sessions were really to sort of help us understand the world of innovation in higher education. What are other folks doing and how well are they doing it? So, but we can take this to heart, and I'll remember to contextualize the next innovation session, which has not yet been planned. So we're not coming, and I don't want to think we're pitching. None of us are on the take at AQ, or well, maybe some of us are, but I'm not aware.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Derek, please go ahead.
Coming from a student aspect, I joined California University of Pennsylvania before we were an integrated university. I came in during COVID, and our professors were not ready for that. And I feel like what this can provide to our professors and faculty and staff is something that they need to know is we all learn different now. And now being within an integrated university, I'm taking classes at Clarion in Edinburgh. And for instance, I had a class where one of my professors did not know how to set up the Zoom so that I could see the chalkboard. So I had to follow the PowerPoint myself. So, and when Dr. Habib, who was one of my professors, whenever she said that she was incorporating the Zoom call more after taking these courses, I feel like that would be great, especially at our integrated universities. We threw the integration with them, and they were not as prepared as we thought we could be. And our professors need the training in order to focus on these students at these integrated universities, or we are going to lose students with retention. And I think that this is a great tool in order to keep our students here with like the online aspects and with keeping them focused online. Because honestly, I could log onto a Zoom call and my mind could wander anywhere else. But my professors now, like definitely Dr. Habib is one of them, and she can make sure I'm focused on my Zoom call with the presenting a document and sending it into her, or asking if I'm understanding the topic at hand. And like before like these courses were taken, I never had a professor ask me if I was okay on a Zoom call or if I was understanding and things like that. And as we continue to navigate through the future of higher education, our some techniques that worked in the past are not going to work now. And this would just be very beneficial. Coming from a student aspect, I think my professors, at least at Penn West, will need these courses.
And just let me build on that. It's a great comment, Derek. Thank you. Professional development is not a punishment, right? It's a gift. And I'm speaking as a guy who's like done too many 360-degree evaluations, and yeah, they suck, but it's also a gift. You learn, right? And saying we need to be current doesn't mean that we're not great people. I mean, if I'm in an enrollment management office, I'm pretty sure enrollment management in 2023 is a lot different than it was even in 2014. Just is. So, and we talked about investment in our people. And the reason we're investing in our people, because education is changing, because our students are changing. I'm thinking of, ESU. East Stroudsburg University became almost majority minority in about 10 years, right? And I mean, over a pretty brief period of time. So there's a lot of stuff that has to get done to be able to be responsive in an effective way with a very different student body. Integrated university, similar thing. The world is changing around us, and it's changing all across. Leadership, presidents, faculty, people in all of our business and student facing functions have to change. And it's not good enough just to say, hey, can you keep up? You got to invest. You got to invest in folks, and that's come out loud and clear. So I do want to be super careful to be, the fact that we're investing in our people reflects that they are really good and worth investing in, and that the world around them is changing, and we need to change with it.
Thanks. I think that very important context, and we'll wrap it up with that. I'm only going to reiterate the fact that in this phase of system redesign, it is all about growth to meet what we know our workforce needs to close the gaps that we've been talking about. And that is the context around which each board meeting we're talking about innovating in the system. It's only to help us move toward meeting those goals. And Derek, I think you had great context, frankly, hearing from a student and actually really understanding how it had a practical effect was very important also. So with that, why don't let's move on, and,
Yeah, and Denise is next to
to
do a report
Denise,
on the
yes.
policy review.
right, okay, Denise, our Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, you are.
Awesome. So thank you.
We just move the mic.
Sure. Does that work? Okay. Good morning, everyone. As Madam Chair said, am I getting an echo? You want me to go to the podium? Okay. You fixed it? Okay, awesome. So, Madam Chair, thank you for allowing me to give you this update on the state systems policy review efforts since our February meeting. I'd like to begin by reminding everyone on the purpose and the objectives of this work. As you can see here on this slide, and it's, quite simply, we want to make sure that our policy environment lends itself to creating a system where all of our stakeholders have what they need to succeed, and that our policies, as Madam Chair said in February, are not creating any unintentional consequences, particularly for some of our special emphasis groups. So through that, the board reviews, to that end, the board reviews policies through a structured DEI lens to identify potential consequences of these board policies. And then the end action is to recommend a course of action to policy custodians to mitigate any consequences that are suggested through our review. Randy, I'll take the next slide. So this is where we are to date. Some of this is a reminder from our February meeting when we convened or when we got the charge in late 2021. I assembled a representative committee to carry out that charge, and it is comprised of faculty, staff. We had one student, but I want to be totally transparent. The students' involvement was dictated by their having to balance, their responsibilities to their coursework first. So I would not be fully honest if I said that their involvement was to the same degree as faculty and staff, but their voice was very important nonetheless. So after we convened this representative group, we did some training, we did some tool development, some calibration exercises, and then we actually did a review of 22 policies. This is a pilot phase. Now the recommendations have moved on to policy custodians, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a moment. We will refine the pilot phase of the process, and that will begin in May, where the full policy review committee, and there's about 15 of us, and it includes, so I didn't say legal, there's someone from legal affairs as well, including faculty, staff, and folks from my office. But we'll come back together in May, and we will look at this pilot phase. We will look at, our training. We will look at the instruments. We will refine the process to make sure that our efforts are as effective as possible. During the spring 2024, fall 2024, we will start reviewing the remaining board policies. That how we do that may change based on what we learn when we reconvene as a committee in May. There'll be some recommendations to so we already made some recommendations to the policy custodians, as I said earlier, and they are reviewing them now. And when I get to the next slide, I'll talk to you a little bit more about what that process looks like. But
apologize. Who are the policy custodians?
Yeah, I was going to get that to the next slide, but I can go ahead and.
No, you're going to cover.
Yep, I'm going to cover it. Yep. So anyway, this is an ongoing process, and Randy, thanks for flipping. You're ahead of me, Sam. But that's okay. So the policy custodians, these are senior staff members in the office of the chancellor who have responsibility for oversight of the specific policy. So to give you an example, if you look at the refund for tuition and fees,
The policy custodian would be someone out of Sharon's office, out of finance and administration. I'm sure, absolutely. If you look at student domicile regulations, that is a legal issue. So that would come out of Jeff's office. So there are people in the office of the chancellor who have been identified as having oversight responsibilities. Thank you for that question. I'm sorry I didn't lead with it, and I kind of figured that was going to come up, but anyway. So anyway, what you see here is where we are now. All of these 22 policies are in the hands of policy custodians. And just to go through the rest of the list, Chief Academic Officer, so Dr. Donna Wilson, she is overseeing policies that she has ownership for, if you will. Chief Student Affairs Officers, that would also be underneath Dr. Wilson. Shop Legal Affairs. Randy has some responsibility for some policies that wouldn't reside in some of those other areas. And to give you an example of what that one would be, I think Randy has oversight for how we name our buildings. I think that one falls underneath him. So each one of those policies that you see there, and I can update you, Sam, if you'd like, at the next meeting, who the policy custodians are for each one of those.
It just was a term, wasn't clicking in my brain. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay, awesome. So, you know, as my colleagues go through the review of the recommendations that the Policy Review Committee made, this is the timeline for them to come back to my office with their response to those recommendations. And again, these are just recommendations. They are obviously, you know, not mandates. And we set up a system, an electronic system for them to submit any comments, any recommendations for moving forward. So, you know, depending on the policy, you know, Dr. Wilson, you know, for a academic affairs policy, she's going to consult with her chief academic officers, chief student affairs officers. It could even be folks in human resource. So it just really depends. It's the policy custodians' discretion who they want to consult with before they submit a formal response. And that could include recommendations to change the policy or not. Does that make sense to everyone? It's a long, Brandy, I'm going to ask you to go back to that slide if you don't mind. The one with the dates. Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, am I okay? Okay, awesome. So, you know, because of all of the things happening across the campuses, and given, you know, that these are not decisions that can be made by one person. This is the timeline that policy custodians have set forth, realistic expectations for when they will be able to not just review and deliberate on the policy recommendations, but put forth any recommendations to ultimately bring to the board. So it varies from policy custodian functional area to functional area. Are there any questions? It's a lot of work, and I have to tell you, I am just, you know, just super proud of the committee and grateful for my colleagues, you know, Sharon and Donna and others, just for, you know, doing the work and taking it seriously, because our policies can have unintentional consequences on our students, and we want to make sure that that's not happening.
Denise, this is a huge undertaking. Do you have any just ballpark estimates as to how many individuals are actually contributing to this entire effort?
I can tell you again, and Jen, I'm happy to share the full report with you. There's representation from just about every university. There are at least 15 people on the policy review committee who have gone through training and so forth and so on. The policy custodians, they could be consulting with anywhere between, I don't know, 5 to 7 people, depending on what the actual policy is and what the recommendations put forth, you know, include. So it really varies, but I can tell you my committee is consistent, and we meet on a monthly basis. We've moved to quarterly since we've gotten through this heavy lifting on the front end, but quite a few people are involved. Yeah. And yes, sure. Mhm.
I was just looking, I wasn't sure how many policies we had, so I just looked it up. We have 77 board policies.
I
on the
thought
website.
it was closer to 100, so.
Oh,
but-
well, on the website, unless it, maybe I miscounted, but
Is it
77.
77? Okay, that's good.
And how many have been started the process?
22.
22.
We didn't want to we didn't want to implement a process for all 100 policies without giving ourselves a chance to see what was working really well and what was not. And that's why we decided to pilot 22 policies.
Like roughly a third of them.
Yeah.
There's 77.
Mhm.
I'm not that good at math. Now, not to like understate or overstate whatever the term would be. I'm not familiar with all of our policies. All board members, we should probably look at those once in a while, including myself. But I just looked at the one for volunteerism. It's a 2-page policy.
Mhm.
And I think on that chart, it said like in the fall of 2024 is the date for that. And it seems like a long time, 15, 16 months from now to review a 2-page thing. I know
Yeah.
there's more to it than that, but I guess I don't understand the time frame on some of these things.
Yeah, well, they may not be so obvious, and some of that could have to do, with the, I don't want to say competing, but other things, that policy custodians and their constituent groups are working on. And the other thing that I want to say is, in some cases, those 1-paragraph, 2-paragraph policies may need the most work because they really weren't thought out in terms of their title, what the actual purpose of the policy should be. I can give you an example. Rich, I'm gonna just talk a little bit. So Rich and I, or Rich and folks in my office, they've been talking about the policy on student trustees. And we looked at that policy, and I think it's 3 sentences, but if you look at it through a DEI lens, and if you look at our commitment not to get out of our lane on things like high impact practices and their impact on historically excluded groups, there is no mention of a commitment to diversifying student leadership in that policy. So sometimes a 2-sentence 1-paragraph policy may turn out being one that needs more work than what is suggested by its length, if that makes sense.
No, but
Okay.
no, sometimes, everybody in the board, we all have different backgrounds and everything. And sometimes it just seems, not probably just this system, it just seems things in higher ed just move very slow
They do.
compared to
They
the
do.
backgrounds. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
almost slower than the legislature. Now, the
No,
legislature's
I really do appreciate that. But and my colleagues are here. I can tell you that this is a priority for all of us. And we don't want to rush something just for the sake of getting it done. We really want folks to engage in critical conversations about these policies.
Hopefully none of the policies are, but if some of the policies are discriminatory, it just seems like a better timeline. I mean, we're basically saying, 15 months from now, we're gonna make a recommendation. Then at some point after that, the board would have to vote to change the policy. So
Yeah.
if there's a policy that's discriminatory, it shouldn't be floating around for another 1.5 years is all. I don't mean to be critical, but
No, and
then
I
there's
appreciate that.
there's 50 policies that the process hasn't even started yet. So,
Right.
so we
Yeah.
could have policies, I don't know, 2 or 3 years from now until we fix them. It just seems like if there's something that's unfair, it just seems like we should fix it, more quickly.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And Jeff Hawkins is here from, Legal Affairs. There are certain policies, I don't think any of our policies are discriminatory per se, but they may have unintentional consequences just by the fact that we didn't look at it through the lens of maybe someone from our LGBTQ plus community, or from our rural communities, look at it from their perspective. There are certain groups of folks who have been excluded, as we know, from higher education over the years, and our policies, now that they are part of our communities, increasingly our policies don't reflect the reality of their participation in our community. So I don't think discrimination is the issue. It's just unintended consequences of some of our policies.
Well, that too, there's an unintended consequence that's
Yeah.
hurting people. You know, we don't want that to continue for 2
I-
or 3 more years.
Yeah.
Right, so if I could just jump in, so maybe is it possible that I'm sure it's sort of an initial review, right, has been done?
Yes.
Okay, so then possibly, and maybe that actually already reflected it, so please correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong. But prioritizing and putting on, you could have a timeline that's more aggressive in terms of priority policies that need to be right instead of a methodical going through, just, in response to Representative Roy's concern. I'm wondering if that's something that, I don't know, might be feasible.
I certainly think it's feasible to have that conversation with my colleagues. Absolutely. Thank you.
Question, and I shouldn't ask a question I don't know the answer to, but I remember like a year and a half ago, I don't remember the agendas as good as the chancellor, but there was a change in policy that we made regarding equality and LGBT and discrimination. Was that through this process, or was that something that I remember, I think it was 2 Julys ago that we took a big step to kind of update our housing and employment? Was that from this, or was that just something that we took on our own? Do you remember, Chancellor? A year or two ago, we updated our some discrimination language that was in our policy. Was that from this review, or was that just something we?
No, this review has been going on forever. We started off on a number of tracks, this being one. The other was to really look at, and we acted on it, I think at the last meeting, a suite of board resolutions and policies that address the issues of inclusion that impact the universities being as inclusive as they can be. And we packaged those together, if you remember last time. So that grew out of it was one of the outcomes of a working group that was convened, looking at Ken Long, like when was the First Amendment working group? It was about a year and a half ago. 2021. Yeah. So it is slow moving, and we need to review that.
I was happy that we did that. I think just to Representative Roy's concern, I think a lot of people are looking at these. If there is an immediate problem, they pull it out to address it. But I think this thorough approach is very responsible. They're timely, and it's just an extra kind of level of scrutiny to make sure that we aren't, having language in there that, me as a middle-aged, guy like might not see a problem with. So I think it's a good approach. It's timely, but I think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your support and your questions. Appreciate it. Thanks. Any other questions for me?
Say it again.
Are they given to the presidents, and are they followed at the universities, or what do we do with them?
So
how does it work operationally?
Sure. Generally speaking, if there's a new policy or a policy change, it goes through a review process. Basically, rabbits and friends and relations get to have a look at it. And then ultimately it comes to the board for action. So the policies that I guess there's 77 of them that are listed on the website. Those are all a product of board actions, and compliance is required. I mean, they're policies, and many of them will have, it goes even deeper. Many of them will have attached they're called procedures and standards, which is policies we've been making under board leadership. Talked about it yesterday, actually. As the board begins to operate at a level of altitude, focusing on policy and strategy, shifts into the hands of the executive, and I'll implicate myself with the presidents, to manage the implementation, and that implementation is captured in these procedures and standards, which the board does not see. I mean, it's welcome to, but they don't need to approve. And it's the procedures and standards that we follow when we practice, and where necessary, we audit. I'll give you one example because it came up, I guess, yesterday during the workshop, the sustainability policy. We did that one pretty quick. I'm looking at Sharon. It was less than a year from start to finish. In turn, and through the generation and consultation process, we implemented it. I think the board approved it in July 2019 or October 2019, and we implemented it straight away. And so the budget review and everything we do around sustainability planning, and the conversation we had yesterday about reviewing some of the financial outcomes, et cetera. All of that is driven by policy and procedures and standards. So we're, as any state-related agency, I guess we swim in that stuff.
And Governor Guildenberger, I'm sure you know that these are public documents and they're on the Board of Governors website, for everyone to see.
Actually, something that we'll have been involved in recently, the appointment of our newest presidents were all governed, and I'm thinking of Charles at SHIP and Ken at ESU. Those two were governed by our policy on presidential appointment, which we changed in order to enable a higher degree of flexibility to a council of trustee to determine the path they wanted to go on. So there's in your lifetime on the board is an example of a policy that was changed to raise the level of altitude, because it was the policy in the original format was very prescriptive in a way which I think tied your hands at Shippensburg, for example.
Yeah.
And so we made that policy change because we recognized that was a bad thing. And then we pushed into the procedure and standard the capability to give the Council of Trustees at Shippensburg an opportunity to choose a presidential appointment path, which was frankly differently implemented than at East Stroudsburg, but the policy allowed that. So so we are, I won't say, we act.
We use them. Yeah.
We use them.
Yeah, we use them. But good question. Okay,
That's all I have.
That's
unless there are
your
more
report.
questions for me.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you, Vice Chancellor. We appreciate it.
Yep.
Now, let me turn to the Governance and Leadership Committee and yield the floor to Sam Smith, the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a reminder, while we sort of function in a committee of the whole, and all the board members, presidents are always free to comment on anything taking place in these committees. Only the actual committee members will vote, and then it'll go to the full board later. So Charissa, would you please call the roll for the Governance and Leadership Committee?
Yes. Governor Smith,
Here.
Governor Mazur,
Here.
Governor Jones, I guess since she was recently appointed,
Here.
Governor Hancock,
Here.
Senator Schwank,
Here.
and Chair Shapiro is ex officio.
Here.
Thank you. You have the quorum.
Thank you. Today, the only real order of business we have isn't just an only thing. It's actually a pretty important thing that we do. And that is to approve some student trustees to our Council of Trustees. I mean, it's something that I've often commented about, how I'm impressed with these students, is just as we have the engagement of our student trustees on this board. Obviously, all of our local COTs have the same need for that input. And really, as you'll see from the nominees today, they're equally impressive. They're students that are engaged and bring a lot to the debate of the issues at each individual college. And I want to especially thank our universities. A lot of this is driven by the commitment of the presidents, down through student affairs or whomever their university uses to kind of direct the selection process. For instance, at IUP, our student trustee is the chair of that search committee, because I don't know if that's what other schools do, because the students obviously are the people that know the other students better than I would or someone else. So it's a really a good process that that we use there to help find the best possible candidates from each of the schools, but it is really driven, at that local level. So in the agenda, there's additional information regarding 5 student trustee candidates. And our nominees today, I'm going to ask each president to say a few words about their student. And then we'll vote on the nominations in one motion at the end, unless there would be an objection to that. First, we'll begin with Jessica Dodge from Commonwealth University of Bloomsburg, and I'll ask President Hannah to tell us a little bit about Jessica.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Good morning, everyone again. Jessica is an extraordinarily young lady. She's actually a first-year student at Commonwealth Bloomsburg. We had a call for nominations to the entire student body, so it was a public nomination process. The selection committee is made up of the current student trustee, chief of staff to the president, and a faculty member and an administrative staff member. We had 9 applications, 3 finalists, and Jessica truly rose to the top. All of the applicants were extraordinary, but this young lady was her class president in high school, Dean's List first semester as a nursing student, and has been involved in numerous activities on campus. I wonder when she has time to do her nursing classwork, but as a Dean's List student, she's obviously doing remarkable work. I endorse this nomination wholeheartedly without any reservation. Thank you, Chair Smith.
Thank you. Second, we will have President Ken Long from East Stroudsburg University introduce Damali Jackson.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson will make an excellent member of East Stroudsburg University's Council of Trustees, helping to ensure that students' interests are at the forefront of all of the discussions of the council. Ms. Jackson attended high school in the Poconos and will enter her 3rd year at ESU in the fall with a major in communication and minor in business management. She's very active in the University Student Government Association and has held many cabinet level positions. He's also a member of the STEP team and a member of the Women of Color Initiative at the university. Ms. Jackson, coming from the chair of the committee, which is a member of our Council of Trustees, stated, we had a pool of excellent candidates to apply for the trustee position, but Ms. Jackson's leadership, campus involvement, and personality set her apart from the competition. I wholeheartedly support Ms. Jackson's nomination and appointment to the Council of Trustees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Our 3rd student candidate is Shagufta Hawk from IUP, and I'll ask President Driscoll to introduce Shagufta.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. The process at IUP, as Mr. Smith has already indicated, is a committee chaired by our current student trustee. Other trustees are a member of that committee, along with faculty, staff, and other students. We had an exceptional pool, and Ms. Hack rose to the top of that list after careful review. She's a sophomore with a double major in economics and finance. She serves as the vice president of our Student Government Association. She serves as the vice chair of our University Senate, which is a broadly inclusive shared governance entity for us. She is a member of the Cook Honors College at IUP and a leader therein, and lots and lots of other stuff. She's all over campus doing all sorts of things, engaged with other students. She's a remarkable person, and I will just finish my endorsement by saying the following. When her name came forward to ask me to sign the endorsement letter to the chancellor, I actually did a happy dance in my office, which is something no one else has ever seen happen before. She is an incredible leader, and I'm looking forward to working with her for the rest of her career at IUP. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Driscoll. We'll now turn to President Lori Bernatowski with Penn West University Clarion to introduce Rachel Keister.
Thank you. Rachel Kister is a junior at the Clarion campus of Penn West, where she's working towards a bachelor's degree in communications with concentrations in public relations, advertising, and corporate communication. She also has minors in social media, sports media, and speech communication. So obviously she is very busy, but still willing to serve. As a Dean's List student, Rachel has a strong record of academic success. Her significant campus involvement, specifically her work with the Student Senate, provides experience in advocating for her fellow students. She accepted an invitation to participate in the President's Leadership Academy and has gained insight into leadership through the program's various workshops. Rachel shares that her passions are sharing laughter, expressing her creativity, and encouraging engagement across the Clarion campus. She continuously seeks opportunities to learn and gain experience. In her various roles, she has demonstrated a keen ability to connect with students, which, coupled with her educational background, will serve the Clarion campus well. We're delighted to welcome Rachel to the Penn West Council of Trustees, and we look forward to her perspective and insight. And I will say, we had our COT meeting at the Clarion campus a week ago, and Rachel was at our dinner the night before, at the legislative breakfast, advocating for Penn West, so she is already gearing up.
Thank you, Lori. And our fifth student candidate is Sierra Mitchell from Slippery Rock University. And I'll ask President Barry to give a few words of introduction to Sierra.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. As with other schools, our committee is chaired by our student trustee who did an extraordinary job helping to select our successor. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Sierra Mitchell as Slippery Rock University's nominee for student trustee. Sierra is a second semester junior from Pittsburgh. She's pursuing a Bachelor of Arts degree, majoring in political science and minoring in business administration. Sierra is an excellent student with a 3.9 overall grade point average. In addition to her impressive academic record and class leadership, she is an exceptionally hard worker who has held many challenging public-facing jobs to support her education. Sierra is engaged with numerous student organizations on campus, including the Black Action Society and debate team. Last year, she served as a volunteer for the Student Conduct Hearing Board, another role that requires poise, confidence, maturity, and discretion. She is eager to serve as a student trustee and to engage in constructive engagement and partnership with the campus community. It's my honor to recommend her to the council.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. I would now ask for a motion that the committee recommends the Board of Governors appoint the following students to the respective university councils of trustees: Jessica Dodge for Commonwealth University Council of Trustees, Damali Jackson for East Stroudsburg University Council of Trustees, Shagufta Hawk for Indiana University Council of Trustees, Rachel Kister for Penn West University Council of Trustees, and Sierra Mitchell for Slippery Rock University Council of Trustees. May I have a motion to that effect, Mr. Mazer?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second? Thank you, Madam Chair. Any discussion from the committee or other board members? Seeing
Just a
Mr.
question,
Argyle?
if I might. I was speaking to Skylar earlier. 4 decades ago, the small college that I attended broke all precedent, and I was allowed to attend a meeting of the trustees under the condition that I was not allowed to speak and I was not allowed to vote. I'm assuming that these students are much more allowed to participate. What exactly is their role? As a new member, I don't begin to understand.
So that's part of the policy review.
Okay, thank you. So we have made progress. Good to know.
Yeah, Senator Argyle.
You thought higher ed was slow.
Yeah, in most cases, the student trustees on our council trustees, of which there's just one to each council trustees, participate just as much as these students. They have a full voice, a full vote. So they are they have equal representation, just like we want these students to kind of bring the student perspective. You bring a legislative perspective. Some people come from business, some expertise. So they're fully engaged though in most cases. They're a little scary in my book because they're so smart and poised. It's quite impressive. So any other discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the nominations are approved and moved to the full Board of Governors. I know that lots of times there's conflicts for students for these, but Randy, do we have any of those students available that might want to say hello?
Yes,
comment?
we are fortunate. All 5 are actually
Right.
on Zoom.
You're in
So,
charge.
Sure. I'm going to go to Jessica first and then Damali. So Jessica, if you want to say a few words, you can.
Sure. As a current first year student, I'd just like to emphasize my appreciation for this great opportunity and responsibility. I'm honored to serve as a student trustee for Commonwealth University at the Bloomsburg campus, and I look forward to working and growing in the position throughout my next 3 years at Bloomsburg.
Thanks, Jessica. Damali and then Shagupta.
Hi, my name is Amali Jackson. I just want to just go back off of what Jessica was saying. I'm very honored to have this position to be nominated for this. I want to thank the search committee, President Long with our interview, and just other supportive members, Dr. Adams, and people who recommended me for this position. I'm very excited to get started at work. Thank you.
Thanks to Molly. Shagufta, then Rachel.
Hello. Thank you so much for this privilege, and I'm excited to serve in this capacity. I would also like to thank Maura King, who's our current student trustee. She did such a wonderful job walking me through the position, and the search committee, and President Driscoll for his kind words. And I'm just really looking forward to this opportunity.
I guess no happy dance, Dr. Driscoll. Thanks, Shagufta. Rachel, then Sierra.
Hello, my name is Rachel Kister, and I just wanted to say thank you all so much for this opportunity. I look forward to working with you all and making the Clarion campus as well as the whole Penn West University a better place. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. And to bring us home, Sierra. And Sierra's connection.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. I just want to say thank you so much for accepting me into this position. I'm very grateful. Current student trustee, as well as the president, for walking me through the description and the role that I will have to fill. And I'm excited to advocate for the students as well as work with the current student trustees. The current trustees, sorry.
Great. Thank you, Sierra. That is it, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you very much, and look forward to the official ratification of these appointments later at the full board meeting. Turn things back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair and Committee Chair. Our next item of business is tuition and tech fee.
Actually, before we get to that, if you could just do the approval of the, on page 7, the approval of the committee actions.
Oh, by the full board.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought we did that later. All right. Okay, let's back up. We now bring this into the full board out of committee. And I believe I need a motion to approve the governance and leadership's recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, terrific, and congratulations. More fantastic students helping our universities. All right, now we are going to move on to tuition and tech fee. And for that, I think I'm going to turn it over first to Dan.
Thanks so much, Madam Chair. So let me begin, if I can, by just reminding us a little bit about who we are and what we do. I know you haven't forgotten, but just to refresh our memories. So Randy, if you go to the first slide. So, we are the people's universities, right? We are owned by the state. I think our oldest university is 190 something. Aaron Cheney is in that 186, and our youngest is probably 130. And we were all founded basically as colleges that were there to supply the Commonwealth with employees in urgently needed areas. We were founded as teachers' colleges. Now, obviously, over time, the demand for skilled workers basically expanded well beyond education. And as the state's owned universities, we expanded with it. So if you look today at our sort of portfolio of courses, 60 and graduates, 60-ish% of our graduates are leaving us with degrees in the highest demand areas the state has: education, healthcare, a whole variety of areas of science, technology, engineering, business, and public services. So as the state's needs change, we change with those needs. And it's interesting that if you look at our, phrase of art, credentialing productivity, the number of credentials that we produce on average year, in those high demand areas, they've actually grown somewhat since 2010, even though our enrollments have declined by about 30%, right? So just to give you a sense of that shift. So that's who we are. That's what we do. And we're really good at it. I'm going to say that out loud. We are really good at what we do. And we presented data to this body to show that our students graduate and they get good jobs and they stay in Pennsylvania. 65% of them are here in Pennsylvania 10 years after they graduate. And they're earning well. They're getting a good return on their investment so far in higher education. And they're contributing to the Commonwealth. And then something we don't talk about is that they also get all of the other things that go along with having completed a college degree, things we don't typically think about. But degree completers have better health outcomes. They have more stable family lives. They contribute more to their communities. They are less exposed to unemployment. And we could go on. All of these things track with higher education. They just do. So here we are, and we find ourselves in a Commonwealth which has incredible need for more talent, for more people educated to the post-secondary level. 60% of jobs in Pennsylvania today, not in 5 years, require somebody in them with some higher education. And less than 51% of our adults have that. So that's a gap. It's a huge gap. And if you look at sort of state workforce projection data, the greatest demand growth is going to come in the master's and bachelor's degree areas, which is where we concentrate our efforts. And it is in the areas where we produce, where we have the greatest strength: education, healthcare, STEM, business, public services. So we have oriented our work of the systems redesign on that problem. We are owned by the state. We are here to fill its needs. And we have designed or transforming our system so that we can continue to be of service. So frequently, so if we go to the next slide, people ask, well, what does that cost? And the answer took a while to figure out, but this board has promoted the same answer for 3 years. That's because this is what it costs. It's about $700 million a year. And that has been reflected in our budget request 3 years in a row. Yay, we're consistent. So this year, that request, a 3% increase in the base, our base is $552.5 million, plus $112 million to focus on improving credentialing output, graduating more students in the areas where the state has the highest need. So 112 million, 100 of which, or almost 100 of which, goes direct to student in the form of aid. That at 700 million freezes tuition, would freeze tuition. We've frozen tuition 4 years in a row. Would freeze tuition for an unprecedented 5th year. It would meet our inflationary cost. It enables our universities to grow credentialing in those high demand areas. It allows us to invest in our people and invest in our infrastructure. It allows us to be responsive to the many of the comments that we heard this morning from our colleagues at AFSCME. It would enable us to continue to invest in improving the student experience and improving our outcomes and achieve all of the many things that our owners, the state, want to see us accomplish. So often people ask another question, which is not how much does it cost? How much does it cost? 700 million. They ask another question, which is, well, what would it cost to buy down a tuition increase? All right, that's a different number. So that's a different question. That's the question. That question is, what's the cost to carry? What would it cost to do next year, next budget year, 23-24, what we did in this year, 22-23? Now that's not all the fancy investment, not the credentialing productivity, not the system redesign, not the improved outreach to the other communities of students we know we're going to need to serve to fill those gaps, right? You can't make up the talent gap. That's 60% jobs requiring people in them, 51% people have that. You can't make up that talent gap on the basis of the traditional high school leaving population. They're shrinking. in number. You have to reach into new markets. So you don't get any of that. The cost to carry is not a conversation about filling the state's needs. It's a conversation about the cost to carry. So that's a different question, has a different answer. So Randy, if you go to the next slide, let me answer that question. That's a matter of looking at inflation. Cost to carry is a matter of looking at inflation. So as you see the inflationary trend, 6% last year in the calendar year 21 to 22-3, and then another 4-ish this year. So I checked in this morning with the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Mr. Powell, and he told me that 23.5%, that 4% tuition increase, that figure has been rounded up every several months, right? And we expect to see it rounded up again. And because our budget years fall between those, the cost to carry is about 6%. That's the cost to carry. Now, that's not the cost of system redesign. That's not the cost of filling the talent gap. That's not the cost of doing all the things that our owners of the state want to see us do. That is the cost to carry. So that 6%, Randy, the last slide, is a $96 million in additional revenue. Our education and general budget, all the things we use to engage our students and improve their, to run the educational part of our enterprise, is 1.6 million. 6% of that is 96 million. Good news, the presidents in their budgets have factored in a 2% growth in inflation. So they've already accounted for 32 million. That leaves 64 million in new revenues. That's the cost to carry. That's the cost to do next year what we did this year. So you could meet that cost in different ways, right? So just to give you some markers, that represents an 11.5% increase in state appropriation. That assumes no tuition increase. Assuming no state appropriation, we could get that 64 million by through a 7.5% increase in student tuition and technical. That's the cost to carry. Now, there are lots of other conversations that we could have, right? Which is not about doing what the state needs us to do, and which is not about the cost to carry. I'm going to categorize that set of questions under what can we get away with. That's a different set of conversations. And, you know, there's any number of different numbers that could come out of that. But let's just appreciate for the moment that that's not really a conversation. It's political dialogue, which is okay. We're a political entity. But let's just understand where we are when we're having that conversation. 2 more points. So anything under 64 million cost to carry sends us back a few years to patterns that we know and we don't love, but we know, right? Where we increase tuition to make up for underfunding from the state, but we can't increase tuition enough to carry the costs because our students can't afford it. Newsflash. Our universities are exceptional. We've seen what they do with the students today through the awards that we've made, through the council, the student trustees that we've appointed. They're filled with passionate faculty, and we saw that this morning, and staff from all quarters, and we saw that as well this morning in comment. But they're not drawn from that part of society which tends to fill the popular imagination when you think about higher education. That part of society is dominated by the elite universities. Our students do not come from wealthy families on the whole. Public higher education is not about educating only a small portion of our society. It is about creating opportunities for all. And as a consequence, our students are disproportionately concentrated amongst low and middle income families. And that's a good thing. That's what you want from public higher education. Now, we are the most affordable option for post-secondary education in the state. We just are. We have the lowest cost per degree by about $5,000 a year. Right? And that's great. We're still too expensive. At our net average price, we're asking a middle income family to spend 45% of its household income to send one student to college for a year. And what's happening, of course, is as the state has divested, and this is the pattern we don't want to slip back into, we have increased price, but not enough to meet our financial needs. And what happens is that the low and middle income students that we serve are leaving us. So it undermines our mission, but worse, it's not about us. It's about the state of Pennsylvania. Where do we get our nurses from? Where do we get our teachers from? Where do we get our accountants from? Where do we get our Main Street employees from? Our government and public service workers, our physician assistants, our healthcare providers. There's not enough people left who look like me and earn enough to spend at the level they would need to spend to chase our tuition, to fill the gap that the state has. It's a math problem. I mean, it's a policy problem and a social issue, but it's a basic math problem. So freezing tuition is important to us because of the students that we serve. But it's only possible if the state invests at the level that is required.
Dan, just back on that slide a minute, I just want to clarify that it says 7.5% increase in tuition if there's no state appropriation, and that is no increase in state appropriation.
Correct. That's no increase in state appropriation. That is, if we are flat funded by the state, we would to cost to carry, not to do all the fancy things that we all know we need to do. Yeah, 7.5%.
May I ask a couple of quick
Sure,
questions?
go ahead.
Maybe the presidents have a good feel for this, but at a 7% tuition increase, how many students would we lose? People who wouldn't come back or people who would not enroll? I mean, you've all made enrollment projections. By how much would those have to be adjusted?
Could I jump in on that? Because 2011, the state didn't invest, actually reduced, I think, a 20% cut. And that year was a 7.5% increase on tuition. So I think we probably could look at what happened in 2011, which I think it's led to a 20% drop. So
Yeah.
I'm not, the presidents could answer more clearly, but it was devastating to students.
It could be even more drastic this time, I'm thinking, because there's so many other inflationary pressures on the family's income that proportion, they just don't have discretionary income in this environment to invest.
So if I may, others may have, I don't think any of us want to make a quantitative prediction on that
just
question.
magnitude.
The reality is that in the current competitive landscape for fewer students in the Commonwealth, we'd be losing students much more significantly than we did in that prior Representative Briggs occurrence. So I don't even want to think about how far it goes. And so that actually changes the calculation to a significant extent if we factor in that loss, because now we're even further behind.
Yeah.
Because we lose the revenue. We don't get the full 7.5% because we're losing students. And more importantly, students are going to have to step away and aren't going to finish their degrees and move on with their lives. So I don't think any of us want to put a number to this, because it would be, I think, horrific. It is fair to say.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not looking for an exact number, but I think we need to keep in mind for whatever level of tuition increase we might contemplate going forward, we're going to have a loss of students as a result of that. And all of our other financial modeling and everything, all of our assumptions are going to have to be adjusted and scaled accordingly.
Absolutely.
So that's a real issue. Another question quickly is in the just the carry scenario. Does that assume a lot of deferred maintenance as well?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you.
It's the cost to carry, which is to do this year, which we did do next year, what we did this year, and this year we did not do a lot of deferred maintenance because.
Good. Thank you.
Because we raid that budget. They raid that budget. Yeah, I mean, the pattern that we're trying to avoid is the one that, got us into the situation that we're in, where the state underfunds us. We do what we can, increasing student tuition, usually in multiples of CPI rate of inflation. we lose the low and middle income students that we need to educate in order to meet jobs. And we force our presidents through a sustainability policy, which requires them to balance budget, to make horrible choices, which then we get beaten up for making.
I think in this environment, even keeping tuition flat is a very aggressive scenario for us because there are so many other demands due to the inflationary pressures on families who are trying to find a way to send their children to college.
One of the other options that's been discussed by some of us would be if the General Assembly would step forward in a big way and assist with debt reduction. I'm assuming those numbers are not baked into any of the numbers that you have shown us here today.
They are not.
That would be a different option.
It.
Yes, but we'd rather think of it as an and.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, could I add something to that? I mean, because not all dollars are equal. A dollar in debt reduction isn't quite the same as a dollar in a general appropriation, or a dollar in direct student to student aid, or a dollar into a scholarship program. I mean, they all have value, but they're not all equal, I think. But to getting deeper into that, you need to talk to those guys.
Just another way of looking at it, there's an annual debt service payment, and we've been talking about the Penn West debt service. If Penn West's debt was eliminated, that would eliminate about 28 million in their annual debt service.
28 million a year, or
a base reduction.
The total nut, if it was paid off today, would be about 290 million.
Okay, but that would eliminate a $28 million annual payment over the remaining period of time for that debt.
And be clear, Senator, we're good with any way, just know that it isn't quite straight math, that's all. It's not quite that simple sometimes, but it all has a positive effect. That's what works for you.
Is there a pro forma that's been put together which shows where we are if the debt was taken care of and if we got everything that we wanted? What is the real cost of that? I mean, does the legislature know the real answer yet?
So the answer is 700 million. That's what it costs to run the system and deliver what the state needs. And the elimination of the debt service that cannot be afforded by one of our universities on the back of its student enrollment.
By several of our universities, because the Penn West number is not the total number. And I think the total debt that's out there for the system, for our universities, isn't the whole picture as well, because our students are living in housing that is supported by debt held by affiliated entities and on and on. So it's a very, very large number. I don't have it at the tip of my tongue, but we know what that is if we put them all. I know my numbers, but not everyone's.
What is the total amount of debt by all 10 universities?
So Sharon, while you're looking that up, the total debt for the system is about 1.8 billion because we added the SURS prepayment last year, so that it was.
Yeah,
so
that's
about,
correct. And then as was referenced, there's additional, some of our universities still have their housing with affiliated operations, and that's about 700 million of additional debt.
but there's a difference between debt that we can manage through on the basis of our business, and there's debt that we can't. And that's what you really need to distinguish. And the debt that we can't is nothing like $1.8 billion. It's more it's a much smaller number. It's a challenge that needs to be addressed. But and it really acute at a university which can't enroll enough students to pay the auxiliaries, which is what pays the debt. So so that's the total cost. And it has been for, I mean, and I'll be the first, it took a couple of years to figure that out, but once we figured it out, we just keep coming back for the same thing. And then not being able to achieve that level, and I'm not complaining, but it does require our presidents, because we don't make those choices here at the system level. It requires our presidents to make trade-off decisions that are uncomfortable. And, and we do everything, they do everything they can to protect the student experience, student outcomes. But after a dozen years of recession management, it's getting harder.
I
Dan?
think the number that we haven't said today is the history of the funding. When the system was started, and I'll be off by a percentage point or two, 75% of our funds came from the legislature, 25% from the students. That now, those numbers are now inverted. It's really that simple. Like, a public system is not funded from the public, ceases to be a public system. And we ceased being a public system once we crossed the 50% public funding threshold. And that was many, many years, long before my time. I've been here 10 years. So we either are a public system and we're funded by the public, or we're not a public system and we're funded by enrollment, and that will look very different. And at some point, we have to stop calling ourselves a public system when we don't get a majority of our funding from the public.
Kate?
Can you remind me what the attainment rate is across the system?
Yeah, system average is about 63, 64%, 6-year graduation.
Have you guys ever calculated how much it would cost to get that up to 70%?
We have. Guess what the number is?
700 million.
That looked really staged.
That's not.
That looked like that commercial we saw yesterday.
Yeah, the assumption is, and you see some of the innovation session this morning. I mean, that's why that is why the student retention, improving the outcomes for students who enroll is the quickest way up. Breaking into new markets, fun to talk about, and we can make some good progress there, but it's slower moving, as you know. So student success, and it's fascinating to me how well our universities have done, you know, protecting that core aspect. I'm thinking the 4-year graduation rate has improved remarkably across the system, and with obviously a variation across our universities. I think it's partly about, you know, we do great work. I think it's also partly about the price is making it prohibitive to stay around too much longer. So,
Dan, I have a question. What is our current out-of-state enrollment?
About 10%.
10%.
Yeah.
And how has that been trending? Similar to in-state?
So, you know, here's newsflash. We're probably amongst the most expensive public higher education in the country. So if you're in New York right now, there's an Excelsior scholarship, right, Bashar?
Yeah.
If you've come from a household earning under $125,000 a year, you get tuition free. Yeah, how do we compete with that, right? And then so we say, let's go out and get more out-of-state students, even at our in-state rate. Really? I mean, I said this in the legislature, so I'll say it here. I mean, you know, our business is nuanced, but it's not complicated. You kind of get what you pay for. They made the point. David made the point. It's either it's a public good and it's funded by the public, or it's not. And if it's not, then it's a very different kind of animal. But I think the pattern that we're trying to avoid is the one that we've been in for, and we know what the outcomes are. The pattern we're trying to avoid is the one that we're sort of not really sure. And it forces really challenging compromises that I think we just have to own it. If that's where we're going to go, let's just go there and be clear about what we're doing. But that's a very different path, right? If we're gonna become that challenge, if we're gonna swing, I think right now we're at 30-ish% of our revenues are student. It's more if you include the auxiliary or on. I'm sorry, 70-ish% of our revenues come from students. If we're going to swing the balance more, we have a different trajectory. We just do. And let's just have that conversation, which is okay. I mean, no one's taking it personally, but these are policy decisions that we really need now to get made. This has been, I've only been at this less than 5 years. My colleagues have been at it somewhat longer, and you know, from the time you were here earlier, Kate, the circumstances haven't changed fundamentally, and you know, we've changed internally so that we're managed in a very different way. Good. So we're capable now of managing to the budget envelope, but this is now not any longer a question about our management capability and competence. This is a question about really what the state needs from the system that it owns. And let's just have that conversation openly, and we will go on the path that we're direct.
Yeah, and ditto with regard to debt relief at Penn West. It's beyond our ability.
You've done a marvelous job. I mean, in the time I've known you to move the system along and to keep it alive and to keep it doing the great things it's doing. What would it take to stabilize the system as we go forward into the future? Do we have to go back to what David mentioned, which is where we were before, was 75% from the state? What do we need? I mean, every meeting we talk about just the next coming catastrophe. What does it take to eliminate that so we can talk about how pretty the weather is?
$700 million. And debt relief. And the debt relief.
If we have the big check back that we just gave away, we can just write $700 million on it and then we have a prop.
But then I would have to sign it. Right, that's
How much money does it take from the state to stabilize this?
$700 million ongoing and about 300 million to assume the cost of about $300 million worth of buildings.
So 700 million a year.
Yeah.
Plus 300 million one time.
Yeah. I mean, now that, and to Sam's point, right? So, and this is where the interest comes, because you could do that 300 million or a million different ways. And Sharon's been talking about this for years. You know, you could pay down the debt service every year. That would cost more, right? Because you're paying interest, or you could consume the buildings all at once, which we're now allowed to do under statute, which costs less.
But if you assume that debt on the buildings, then that reduces your cash flow.
If the
You don't
state
have
assumes.
you don't have any debt on the buildings.
Right.
And we're paying to reach out of our dollars, we're paying down the debt.
Yeah.
And we don't have any more debt, that reduced our needs for cash.
No, because I mean, yes, except we put a ring around the stranded assets. So, I mean, so, and the example would be that the models that we're working on get our universities to stable operations on the 700 million, assuming the debt is taken care of. So no, it does not affect the need. Does that make sense? So the 700 million assumes the debt is taken over, that the stranded assets are consumed.
Yeah, but I think.
Including the debt service, including the.
Correct. That assumed, right.
Yeah.
That's why they're separate numbers. And that's why it's taken a little, we had to get through the February CPP and President Bernatsky's engagement at Penn West to get to that point. But that's where we are.
Dan, the 700 million, it's not a matter of getting to that level and then we just stay there and
Right.
everything's fine.
Send
Because
CPI.
our labor costs are going to continue to rise, and that it would be 700 million, and then we have to adjust for the carrying, changes in the carrying cost.
And just to place that into national context, in the league table, we're 47 or 48. We're 47 this year. We're going to slip to 48 next. League table's a year behind. If we get to 700 million, we're just a little bit behind halfway. So, I mean, if you want to see it in, or put it another way, the state of New York invests twice as much as Pennsylvania per capita in public higher education. Maryland about 4 times as much. Our surrounding states, as a consequence, have a higher adult attainment rate by a lot, especially in the 24 to 35 age group, which means that they're much more attractive to industry because they have a talented employee in our students, because they have talent pool. So that's why this is a public policy issue. I mean, you know, we have, thanks to the board and its leadership and to the presidents, you know, we have worked really hard to get our arms around a lot of challenges, and we've done that. And so now it's no longer the question about, I mean, it's not any longer a question about how we operate. It's a question about what you want. I mean, when I mean you, I mean the ubiquitous. And, you know, look, on the upside, we have done tremendous, our colleagues in the General Assembly and the administration have been tremendously supportive. It's night and day. And I mean, a number of you have been around on this journey, you know, and I can tell you from testifying, I kind of miss the days when I got to go in like every month when we were doing integration. But But, you know, we've moved from a conversation which is about how are you managed to a conversation about, you know, the policy issues, which is, I think, really, really good. And actually at the last two, the appropriations hearings, those were the conversations. I mean, it was money because it was appropriation hearing, but it was really a question about, you know, what do we really need from public higher education? Those are exactly the right questions to be addressing. And it's been very rewarding, not to me personally, and I think thanks to the leadership of the board, to see that relationship evolve. And we saw it obviously last year in very generous funding, both in terms of the one-time ARP dollars, but also in terms of the increase. So, you know, the hope is that we can continue to build on that partnership in a way that sort of benefits our students, of course, our universities, of course, but more importantly, the state, and to continue to drive that policy discussion forward in a promising way that lifts the people of Pennsylvania. You know, my proudest moment, don't do it with me, was when we had a conversation. It was in October, and we were at Millersville. I can remember the slide deck. And we finally had the numbers about our, we've been working with Department of Labor and Industry for like years to get to understand our students, graduates' earnings. And, you know, I remember approaching this with some trepidation because you want to know that your students are doing well and that there's an ROI and all the rest of it. And the result was that the net present value, the value of their education was about $1 million earning over a lifetime, $866,000 or something. But more importantly, you saw that students who came to us from low-enrolled families, from low-income families, 10 years after graduation were earning about as much as those who had come to us from high-income families. It's just what you want to see. It shows that we're, you know, not just feeding the workforce, we're actually lifting people up and their families. And then when you layer race, ethnicity on top of it, you get pretty much the same result, which is really powerful. It's what you want out of public higher education. We're really good at what we do. We can, of course, be better. So that's the conversation, you know, and it maybe it's just because in my 5th tuition discussion, I really don't want to, I mean, I've escaped having to promote a tuition increase, and I don't want to do it. So I'm not going to make a recommendation.
Okay, all right.
Before you move on, can I just make one comment relative to something Bill and Dan kind of said? This problem, I want to just point out this, to me, at least in my opinions, this problem isn't something that just happened in the last few years. It's been over 20 or 30 years. And the problem was kind of not deceptively masked, but it was not easy to see because we could always increase enrollment. And so, you know, every year you had a budget hole at a school. Well, we just recruit an extra couple hundred students because it didn't impact their facilities all that much. At some point it does, but, and there was some of that growth that took place perhaps that maybe ideally shouldn't have, but it was easy to just say, okay, let's recruit a couple more hundred students, you know, okay, we're good. And so that created a little bit of a mask or a veil, let me put it that way, a veil over the underlying structural problem. And so and now we no longer have that ability to just go grab, you know, another 500 students next year. And to the out-of-state thing, you know, yeah, there's maybe some potential in some places. If that's what you were getting at, why don't we recruit more from out of state? But it's our competitive situation is not in an ideal position to do that. And historically, we also used to kind of not recruit out of state. We charged them more. Now we're allowed to accept them for what, $1 more than an in-state? So, you know, I know some might say, well, you got the airplane half full of Pennsylvania students. Why don't you, you know, discount somebody else to fill the plane kind of theory? But those mechanics aren't as simple as it is in a, you know, in an airline business, perhaps, whatever. But I just wanted to point, there's some history to this that isn't something that just happened over the last 2 or 3 years. It has been building. And when you look at it against the demographics of, you know, kindergarten enrollment and high school graduation numbers, you know, an economist saw it, but most of us don't function in that kind of world.
I agree with you. I couldn't agree more. And my concern, and I'm sure it's a concern of others here too, is we can't continue to go down the path which we've been going down these many years. We're running out of room. We have to become something different. And I think we're all feeling that we, it'd be nice to know what that different is, but we don't know yet. And that makes it very, very difficult to plan and to get money and to do all these things. But we are going to eventually have to decide who we are.
So, and the choice that needs to be made is a policy choice by the state.
Yeah.
We don't, that's the problem, Bill. We don't get to decide who we are. We are not a self-determining body.
We are an influencer though.
We are absolutely an influencer, and we can be an advocate, and we can be a member of the community of conversation. But at the end of the day, we're not a self-taxing authority. We can't raise our own revenues.
So I think this is an excellent discussion. I feel it's starting to, veer away from this year's, the immediate issue at the table is regarding setting tuition and tech fee. And I actually, the benefit of this conversation everywhere that it's gotten, and I apologize for pulling it back, but I want to get to the rest of our business. We're going to continue these discussions because it's fundamentally, it's fundamental to everything else that we discuss. And so they will continue. I'm confident about that. With regard to tuition and tech fee, that we would normally set in April, I think we're in a very interesting situation where we may not have enough information to make that decision now. And I'm thinking there's a lot of work that's going on, working very closely with the General Assembly, and like Dan, I just want to reiterate my thanks for those conversations and for the incredibly good relationship we have with the House and the Senate and both caucuses in each. It's really phenomenal where we are with that. Our outstanding relationship with the administration and that partnership also continues to grow. And because those conversations are continuing and that work is continuing, and we may have more information, for example, with regard to debt, et cetera, it would be I'm not sure if it's my decision, but it would certainly be my recommendation that we actually defer a decision on tuition until we meet in July, because at that point, I think we'll have the information that we need to make the best decision for our students.
Madam Chair, may I say one thing?
Please,
I just
Abby.
think it's important to hear the student voice on this perspective. And I want to say that Chancellor Greenstein, you asked what we want, and what many groups want. I think what the students want, or at least what I want, is to be able to stay in the state of Pennsylvania. I want to stay here, and I can't do that if tuition is raised at PASHE and if there are cheaper options elsewhere. So what we want is to stay in the state of Pennsylvania, truly, and continue seeking our education. And on the note of deferring the vote, I think we have discussed and we are in full support of that, because I have faith and we have faith, although I'm an internal optimist, that the state and the legislators will see that that is what we want and that is what we need as students. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we should defer this decision. Any budget proposal, at the state level is just a proposal. It gets changed along the way. The K through 12 education, the proposal was $1 billion increase. For PASHE, about 21 million. Well, just for the sake of argument, during budget talks, budget negotiations, it's possible K through 12 could get cut back to a 900 million increase instead of $1 billion, and PASHE could go up to 121 billion. Or it's possible PASHE could go down to 10 million. It's just, but until the budget's done, I mean, I hope that doesn't happen, but until the budget's done, we don't know. But another thing too, the state related, Penn State, Pitt, Temple, Lincoln, they were proposed to get a 7% increase. This system the state owns a 2% increase. You know, we don't own Penn State, the state. We don't own Pitt. We don't own Temple or Lincoln. So I think there is going to be movement. I like to be an optimist too. And, you know, just as a matter of fairness, to me, it doesn't make sense that some of the universities the state supports would get a 7% increase and other ones would only get a 2% increase. So I think as the budget process moves along, about 2 months from now, we'll know how much money is in the budget for the system. And that's when we can make a better decision, I think. So I completely agree with deferred.
I believe
Senator
Senator Schwank wants to make a comment.
Thank you, Chairwoman Shapiro. I really appreciate the chance to comment. I agree that we don't have enough information to make a vote right now. But I heard the comments, certainly listening avidly. And I don't want to be harsh, but it's a lot of hand wringing too. What action are we going to take to actually get our message across again? It's all of these things that were talked about are important, but I think we absolutely need to, in the interim, while we're waiting for the budget negotiations to continue, to advocate, to reach out to legislators individually as board members. I am a legislator, right? And I certainly will be going to my appropriations chair and talking about it. I would ask that just to make it easier for all of us so that we could reach out, that perhaps Chancellor, we could prepare a one-page advocacy checklist that we could use, that faculty could use, that staff could use. We all want the same thing, but if you follow what other advocacy groups do, they don't just wait for something to happen. We have to be vocal to the right people. And I think we need some assistance in doing that. So that would be my suggestion, that you provide us with that, all of us, so that we can make the ask, not a form letter, just the information so that each of us can reach out personally in the way that we best deem appropriate. And especially our students and the student advocates. I heard you loud and clear. We need your assistance in helping to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Terrific idea. Yes, Representative Briggs.
Thank you. And I just want to echo what Senator Schwank said. I actually think a little fear is needed sometimes with the legislature. I mean, talking about a 7.5% tuition increase is not what I've liked the last 4 years where we've kept it flat. I know there's been sacrifices made, and the legislature has to step up and respond to the proposal. I like the governor's proposal, but the 2% increase, I think we're missing the mark on what that means to students and the legislature. It's up to the legislature to respond. And I'm with Brad. I mean, you Chancellor have done a remarkable job the last 5-6 years, building those relationships, bipartisan. I've already spoken to my leadership that this is a priority because I can't go anywhere near what we will need if it's not a huge investment from the Commonwealth. We've been able to pull rabbits out of hats, and I think we really need to put the pressure on. I will support the recommendation that we won't do anything till July, but I think we have to be very clear on what this would look like to our students and our institutions if it's just a 2% increase. The other thing, and Senator Argyle, I will follow up, but some of us in the last 18 months had conversations with the previous administration regarding a conversation on debt. And I think it would be a great conversation to have in a bipartisan way with the 4 legislators. I know Allison Jones was part of it previously, with the administrative designees, and with Sharon, just to really see what is possible regarding debt. I think that is, maybe not for this June, but a conversation we should all collectively have. We have Appropriation Chair Martin is a supporter and that was a great member here. Appropriation Chair Harris is an alum and a good supporter. So I think we're in a good position to have more helpful conversations regarding that topic than we had in the past. But thank you for indulging my time.
No, terrific. And I agree. And we just have, so we see our Advocacy Resource Center. And yeah, we know what we need to be doing. All right. So I'm sorry, Derek, did you want to say something?
Yeah, as the advocacy thing was coming up, you probably noticed that I'm on there. I hosted the BSGP conference, so the Board of Student Government Presidents Conference, as I'm the conference chair for the BSGP, and presidents as well as any students. I would encourage you to go back and talk to your student governments and get them to do these advocacy posts. Those are the presidents of Penn West SGAs right there. And we just set up a thing and we've sent letters to our legislators requesting requesting support for us as well. We've made it a volunteerism thing, but we all got a photo at that conference, and your students that attended the BSGP conference, they also have their photos. And we've posted on our social medias and we continue to post at any time. And that please send them to that website, as it has so much valuable information on there. It has the infographics, it has everything. And those tools definitely have been an impact with our legislators so far. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. That's great to know. And thanks again to the students for the incredible work that we're doing. Okay, unless there are any objections, I will defer the tuition decision until the board meeting in July. Okay. All right. Very good. All right, moving on. Our next item is ratification of the Apache Officers Association Collective Bargaining Agreement. And the SPIF, I could go through the whole acronym, but it's the fire workers, et cetera, professionals, their union. Their collective bargaining agreement, their memorandum of understanding, and to authorize the chancellor and the chair of the Board of Governors to execute the appropriate documents. That is a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, thank you. The motion carries. The next item is the extension of the chancellor's appointment. So actually, we just walked through your history, Dan, and it is hard to believe that you are coming up to finishing your 5th year. And on the other hand, it seems like you've been here forever. And then I've been here forever with you. So, yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I have in here some talking points to discuss the accomplishments that you've had. And we actually just talked about that. So to be very brief, system redesign, student affordability, the relationships, completely turning around our relationships, I think, with the General Assembly, envisioning and charting a future for some of our struggling universities, the financial sustainability, advancing equity. It's really been, quite a momentous 5 years, I think. And we are looking forward to a future in which we continue this path and really just laser focus on how our students can succeed, and to ensuring that our universities are financially secure and poised to meet the needs and the goals that we have been talking about, right, through system redesign, which we talked about with innovation, framing that context. It's all about reaching those goals. So with that, I move that the Board of Governors, having completed its evaluation of the chancellor, extends the appointment of Chancellor Dan Greenstein for the maximum allowed period of 5 years, and authorizes the chair to execute the necessary documents.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Dan, I wouldn't take that as a negative.
Hasn't accepted yet.
Skylar, please.
Sorry, I have one comment. Just on behalf of the students, I know we continue to challenge you when you come to our campuses, but we really appreciate you being vulnerable and hearing our voices as we go through these challenging times and changing times, as we've all discussed. So I just wanted to make that comment real quick.
Appreciate it. Okay. Any other comments? All right. I think we've already said a lot, but I'm going to call the question then. All in favor, please say aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Congratulations, I think.
That's nobody accepts.
Well, no, we're just going to assume, but I will invite you to make any comment.
I'll be very brief, which most of you know is really hard for me. But so obviously tremendous working with all of you, with our students, our faculty and staff. It's a real privilege, continues to be every day. And I believe, to our last conversation, that our colleagues in the General Assembly, and certainly the governor, I think they recognize that there's a tremendous opportunity, not just for the universities that represent the state-owned system, but for Pennsylvania to provide leadership into the nation, into what 21st century higher education really ought to look like. And that is a great opportunity for all of us. And I look forward to serving in that regard. So thank you.
Thank you. And we did actually mention this yesterday, in addition to all of the where you're helping to take us, where you have taken us within the system. It is true that we're getting national attention for what we're doing, largely because of your leadership. And we are representative of public higher education throughout this country. And so you're so important, you know, even in that greater sense too. So thank you. Okay, for our last order of business, I want to welcome back on Zoom Dr. Tanya Garcia, who has recently rotated off our board after concluding her service as Deputy Secretary of Education and Commissioner of Higher Education. So welcome, Tanya, and I am now going to read into the record this resolution of the board. Whereas Dr. Tanya Garcia well and faithfully served the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as Deputy Secretary of Education and Commissioner of Higher Education, and whereas in her role she represented the Secretary of Education as his voice on the Board of Governors during critically important times, including the global pandemic and through all aspects of system redesign. And whereas she was a constant source of knowledge, perspective, and insights and counsel that enhanced the work of the board and advanced the mission of the system, therefore be it resolved that the Board of Governors honors Tanya Garcia, Dr. Tanya Garcia, for her dedication and commitment to the students, faculty, and staff of the state system, and wishes her happiness and success in the next chapter of her life. And I move that this resolution be acclamation. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. So thank you, Tanya. Hopefully you are on Zoom and would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair Dr. Shapira. Thank you so much for the honor. It was an opportunity that I just relished every moment of. I was, in this position for almost 2.5 years, and being a member of the Board of Governors was truly just a learning experience for me. And also, I was so pleased to bring whatever knowledge and experience I had to really improve the system's ability to move forward and to make difficult decisions that I think in the end will be very, very fruitful for the entire Commonwealth. I will be announcing my next steps very shortly, and I want to thank every single member of the board, Chancellor Greenstein, and all of his incredible team for being so welcoming and for really just delivering all of the success that the system and all of the universities have so admirably earned. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you again. And please, yes, stay in touch and can't wait to hear what your next steps will be.
Thank you.
All right, so to close us out today, for the record, I want to report that the board met in executive session yesterday from 1:30 to 4 p.m. and this morning from 8:30 to 9 to discuss contractual and personnel matters. So before we adjourn, are there any other matters to come before the board? Okay, hearing none, the meeting